First, I'll say that you need to be open and transparent about how you act, how you believe, not necessarily like, what your political beliefs are, but you share with your community how you live and what your expectations are, and you will attract similar people for the most part. But then, there's two things that will happen. And if you build a strong community and you are interacting personally, a lot of times your community is going to have your back, right? So when something does come up and there is maybe somebody in there trying to start trouble, your community will come to you, kind of take care of it a lot of times. But then as far as moderation, I believe strongly in quick, decisive action. I don't like letting those kind of things fester in a Facebook group or even on a Facebook page. If it's a problem and you feel like it's going to be a continued problem, cut it out, get rid of it. I just don't have room for that kind of stuff. We don't tolerate it. We make the rules very clear in our Facebook groups, and that we are very strict on that. And so, unfortunately, our Facebook group is large, and so we don't catch everything. But when we do catch it, we take very quick and decisive action.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Now, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Paul Gowder is the visionary owner and founder of powwows.com, a prominent online community dedicated to celebrating Native American arts and culture for a quarter of a century. With his extensive experience in running a successful online community, Paul is well versed in the challenges and triumphs that come with it. He extends his expertise to assist fellow entrepreneurs in navigating the complexities of building and managing online businesses through his public speaking engagements and consulting services. You can benefit from Paul's wealth of knowledge, learning how to overcome hurdles and achieve success in the dynamic world of online communities and business. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time.
I want to ask you first, before I get into questions on the topic, just to tell us a little bit more about how you became an entrepreneur.
Accidentally. I tell people I'm a complete accidental entrepreneur. I did not set out to build a business. I was in this long time ago. In 1996, I was in grad school, and most of my classes were at night. So I had, besides doing internships, I had some free time during the day. And I started playing with this whole HTML thing and building websites. So I built 2 websites. At the time, I built one on Native American powwows because I was just learning about powwows. I had friends that were taking me, showing me, how to dance, how to make the regalia, all that kind of stuff. So I just built pages on the stuff I was learning. And then, and you can still see behind me, I've still got Star Wars stuff up there. I built another one about Star Wars toy collecting. This was in 1996. It was before the prequels, before Disney bought Star Wars. So that one just kind of sat. The other one took off, and the community responded, and people wanted a way online to have the same feelings they had at a powwow. They wanted to stay connected. This was early internet. So it was a new thing to be able to have that online connection. So the community took off immediately, and over the years, we had to make it a business to pay for things, and then from there, it just continued to grow into what it is today. It's a great community, and we were able to do some awesome traveling and go to events all over the place. I leave tomorrow for New Mexico, so it's been an incredible ride.
Nice. And I also am an accidental entrepreneur, right? I never intended to be an entrepreneur either. And someone kept asking me for help, and so then I was like, well, if I'm going to help you, I need to help others to cover all the costs that I'm incurring, right? And so that's how I became an entrepreneur too. So I always love just to hear the stories of how someone got to where they are now. And I think it helps the listeners too, just understand, like, why do you have the expertise and, be able to kind of have that imparted to them. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk today about community, and specifically like online communities as well. So I would love for you just to talk about, first of all, like, what is your definition really of community in terms of online businesses, and why is it essential for entrepreneurs to focus on building one?
Ah, I love talking about community, and I think of community a little different than a lot of people. And I think this is a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs are making. People want to think that community is related to a platform. And so
Mm,
your community lives in your Facebook group, or your community lives in a Mighty Networks or a Circle, or whatever it is, the thing you built, right? I consider community, because this is how we started. I consider community any person that touches our ecosystem, whether it's through email or a YouTube video or watching a live stream and talking in the comments. Everybody is part of that community, and I treat all of them in that way. So I talk a lot. I do a lot of talking and coaching about email, and I think that is one of the best places to do community outreach and to engage your community. Even though it's a one-to-one medium, you are still talking to people who are engaging with you, and if you make them feel like they are part of your community, you could have great relationships and really build something there. So for me, community is a big term, and I think it encompasses more than what a lot of entrepreneurs are doing nowadays.
mhm. Well, I agree with you too. When you talked about email, I don't know if I would have thought of that as community, because I am thinking of like those groups where, someone maybe posts a question and you're interacting, or,
Right.
maybe you have a Zoom meeting and you get to see people and interact and, chat with each other, whatever that is. But I don't know if I would have thought of email as a community, but it makes sense because you are still sending a message and having some type of interaction. So thank you for
Right.
clarifying that for us as well.
Yeah.
But
And
I would
one
love
of
for
the things,
you. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say more about email, you know, and I get these responses every once in a while, is that, and I've gotten some. We're heading into our biggest event of the year in a couple days. And so I've been doing a lot of promotion about that. And yes, the other day I sent an email out, and like I said, I talk to people like they are part of my community, and so I'm very
Mhm,
personal and direct. And I told them, hey, I've been going to this powwow for more than 10 years. We've been streaming it, but it's big, and I'm starting to feel nervous. I'm feeling a little anxious. I'm feeling the stress of making sure that I do a good job for all of you out there watching. And I've had people write me and say, hey, look, we're supporting you. And I've had, what's kind of the point I was going to, I had people write me and say, hey, look, I've been part of your community forever. I don't normally respond to your emails, but I've been reading your messages and watching your videos for years. Thank
mhm,
you for doing it. And so you never know, in email, there's somebody out there that feels a part of your community, that feels that connection with you, but you're not going to see them because they didn't hit the like button or they didn't comment,
mhm,
right? But they're out there reading those messages. And so you have to treat them as part of your community because they are feeling it, right? And
mhm.
if you embrace that, you're really going to get a great connection with your email subscribers.
Right. Well, I think that's what I was going to say when you actually started, talking on that too, is I think
Yeah,
often as entrepreneurs, we're sending out the messages. We don't always have responses, back to them. And we don't know
right,
if what we're sharing is, really hitting the spot, for them per se. We hope we are. And if we're looking at open rates or something, we're like, well, at least, 30% has opened. So, we're doing okay, theoretically
right.
compared to the numbers. Right. But we don't always know with email, where you said with social media, someone can like or comment and there's some type of interaction too. So I guess it's just harder sometimes for us to feel that we really are creating that community when it's something where we can't see that engagement as easily.
Right, right.
Hmm.
It's a little different. It's like when you first start live streaming, you may not have everybody watching you, but somebody may watch a
Hmm.
replay or something else. You Just like the same thing with email. You have to have that conversation. You have to treat
Hmm.
them like part of your community because they may be interacting in their own way. Same thing with I
Right.
when I first started doing live video and you're talking to a camera and there's nobody watching, right? It feels weird. It feels like you're just talking
Hmm.
to an empty room, but you have to remember somebody's going to interact with it, and you have to talk to them.
Hmm. Right. So if someone wants to then build this community, how do they go about really having that nurtured and like being able to figure out what is the purpose of this as well too. It's not just so I can have some interaction per se, and I want to get the likes or whatever, but I want to actually build relationships, or whatever that might be. Like, what can you say to the entrepreneur who is saying, well, I'm thinking of creating a community, or I have one, but it's not doing exactly what I thought it would? How do they go about doing that effectively?
Right. I think one of the most important things you have to do when you're trying to serve your community is really figure out what your community is looking for. For me, in the beginning, people were just looking for that connection, right? So in the beginning, when we used forums, I don't know if you remember way back when vBulletin and all these things, all this forum software. So it was easy for me. I could sit back and stay out of the way, and people just felt the connection because of the way the forums were set up. But as your community maybe grows, or maybe you have a different type of community, maybe they're looking for just a way to interact with you. Maybe they are looking for that connection. Maybe they're looking for answers in a particular field. You have to find out what your community is looking for. And it may be multiple things, right? And you may have to address them in different ways. But once you kind of figure out what it is that they really want, then you can start building the content to serve them. In email, one of the things I love telling people to do is, once you figure out some of these things that your community is looking for, then you can build these email automations and sequences. So I have one, for example, on what to expect at your first powwow, because I get hundreds and hundreds of people every month saying, oh, I really want to go to a powwow. I've never been, but I'm kind of intimidated. I don't know what to do. I don't want to go there and offend somebody. And where do I find a powwow? So we have a whole email sequence just about that. And it helps people feel more comfortable about going. And then you get those responses back. It's like, okay, I'm going to powwows now. I'm going to do this often, or, I'm going to go to the one in my city every year. So that's kind of what you have to do, is figure out, start talking to them, ask your community what it is you're looking for, listen to the comments, figure out, what are the recurring themes there. Then you can really build content and other stuff around their needs. And that's when the community is going to really grow.
So what would you say to someone then who, maybe they have one right now that is focused on a specific interest or industry, or, part of whatever their company is, but maybe they're starting something different, they're expanding their business,
right?
And it might be something that's not really in the same kind of field per se. It's still kind of under the umbrella of their company. Should they have like two different communities, or do they just have, again, where here's like certain posts for this type of information, and then on different days maybe they have other topics? Like, how do they decide how to effectively manage that so that people are getting the information they want and not seeing things maybe that aren't relevant to them?
Right. I think in the beginning, it's important to try not to do too many different things. So in the beginning, just treat it all as one community, and maybe you have little pockets or little segments that you can talk a little different to people. When it gets bigger, maybe you can branch out and have a couple of, maybe it's a different, going back to, maybe it is a different Facebook group for particular people. Like right now we have 3 different Facebook groups for powwows.com to kind of fit different things people are looking for. But in the beginning, treat everybody in the same community. Not every message you send out, not every picture you post is going to identify with everybody. Right. But in the beginning, just treat them all in one community. That would be my advice anyways.
And what would you say to someone who maybe thought there wouldn't be really any issues that would cause conflict, right? Like, we're not talking, hopefully a lot of us aren't going to be talking about the government or, religious ideas or whatever, but sometimes there could be, someone might be looking at something from a different perspective, and they may not agree or something, so how do you manage that if you are the, the moderator, or, the person that has it, and you're seeing kind of this conflict? Hopefully it's respectful at least still, but how do you manage that?
First, I'll say that you need to be open and transparent about how you act, how you believe, not necessarily like, what your political beliefs are, but you share with your community how you live and what your expectations are, and you will attract similar people for the most part. But then, there's 2 things that will happen. And if you build a strong community and you are interacting personally, a lot of times your community is going to have your back, right? So when something does come up and there is maybe somebody in there trying to start trouble, your community will come to you, kind of take care of it a lot of times. But then as far as moderation, I believe strongly in quick, decisive action. I don't like letting those kind of things fester in a Facebook group or even on a Facebook page. If it's a problem and you feel like it's going to be a continued problem, cut it out, get rid of it. I just don't have room for that kind of stuff. We don't tolerate it. We make the rules very clear in our Facebook groups, and that we are very strict on that. And so, unfortunately, our Facebook group is large, and so we don't catch everything. But when we do catch it, we take very quick and decisive action.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because it's one thing when you first start. If you don't have a lot of members, you don't have a lot of comments, it's going to be easy to see that. But as you, like you said, you grow, or there's, hundreds or thousands of comments, maybe it's going to be really hard to see everything, unless there's a lot of back and forth all of a sudden, and maybe you see that interaction. But I would think that could be very difficult to kind of catch sometimes when someone has said something that might be considered inappropriate or rude or, disrespectful.
Right. It happens. I mean, it'll happen in any Facebook group, no matter what, or even on your page. Yeah. And when you get to a certain size, you're going to want to have some moderators and some people helping you, and look to your community, find the people who are posting on topics and responding the way you would, and identify those members. Maybe they don't even have to be the most active people, but identify people that are like-minded, and elevate those people to moderators and get help. We did that recently. We've started getting a lot more comments and traction on our YouTube videos, and we found somebody in the community. I made him a moderator, and he shows up to every live we have now, and he takes care of a lot of it for us. It was just really great.
So if someone is listening now and saying, well, I think this would be a great opportunity for me to, be able to develop relationships and still share information, but I don't want to have to spend a lot of time doing it if there are not a lot of members. So I want to figure out how to actually grow the group. Like, what would you recommend for them to do to be able to build that membership, whether it's free or paid? I'm not sure, what you focus on specifically, but like, what can they do to really grow that community?
So, actually, I just did a video recently. paulgowder.com/email tools. I talk about some of my favorite tools about growing your email list, and some of the ways. I love doing giveaways. So we do a lot of giveaways that offer prizes that are kind of in line with our community. So we work with some Native American companies to get some really great prizes. That works really well, and you'll find people that'll come out to those kind of giveaways, and then you can develop relationships with them. But also, I say, as far as attracting people, like using your website or something like that, whether it's to add them to your email list or to get them, funnel them into your Facebook page. I know that a lot of people want to offer these opt-ins or these, downloadable PDF or whatever. I personally think that you should offer answers to questions for your opt-ins, whether you're trying to promote them to an email list or send them to your Facebook or whatever. Like I said earlier, my what to expect at your first powwow, that is a major piece of content that we put out all over our website. And so when somebody engages with us and asks those kind of questions, we can respond and be like, hey, here's a place for you to go and learn. And we grow a lot like that. So I think it's important to offer these opt-ins and these chances to connect with you, but you have to make it very specific to what they're looking for. And I think that's, you'll start seeing better growth than, I know I work with a lot of people trying to grow their email list, and so many times they just have a thing in their footer that says, subscribe to my newsletter. I'm like, well, why? Right. So if somebody comes to your website, and maybe if you're somebody who does recipes, maybe you want to offer them, hey, here's my tips on how to do these kind of recipes, or here's my 10 best kitchen gadgets, right? I mean, there's better ways than just subscribe to my list. And I think that's one great way to really start growing. And then you start offering these opt-ins and these call to actions in everything you do, whether it's a Facebook story or a live video. You start telling people, hey, if you want to know more about this, if you're going to your first powwow, here's where you go. And that's how you really start growing, is finding those places where your audience is wanting to learn more information and give them a place to go.
Hmm. Well, I agree with you too. Just saying, click here to sign up for my newsletter or join my
Yeah,
group or something, right? It's like,
right.
why would I want to if I don't know what I'm going to get, right? So you want to
Yeah,
have that value. But I know a lot of times too, the groups will have where you have to request to join and there's like questions you have to ask and, then approve. Or there's some groups that just let you join. Like, do you have
right.
a preference of which you recommend, for businesses or for groups or things like this to
Yeah.
have their in their online communities?
If you're gonna have a Facebook group, I think need to have at least one Facebook group that is public, that is open. You still, for somebody to join, you can have it open where anybody can comment, but then
Hmm.
if they comment, then they're kind of funneled into being asked to join the group. Facebook does a good job with that. But yeah, have one that is completely public facing, so that Facebook will percolate some of your posts up and start sharing your group with other people. Here's a tip though. If you do that for any Facebook group and you're able to ask questions when people join, there are tools out there that will help you make one of those questions. Would you like to subscribe to my email for this, this, and this? Make one of those
Mm-hmm.
questions an email, subscribe, and you can use some tools. I use one called Group Leads, and it goes through and collects all those email addresses and adds it right to your email subscribe button. So if you're going to do that, use one of those tools. But yeah, make one group public and let Facebook do its magic with some of those posts.
Hmm.
We had a Facebook post in our group. It's been about three or 4 weeks. It just took off. It reached like 5 million people in 2 days, because it's a public facing group. It just
Hmm.
spread all over the place. It was amazing.
Wow. So you just mentioned one of those tools where if somebody, clicks and says, yes, I'm interested. So does
Yeah.
that then like automatically pull the information into something else that you see so you don't have to go looking for that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so Group Leads, when you set up your Facebook group and you have the 3 questions, you just make one of those email. Please give me your email address if you'd like to subscribe. So when they fill that out, it's Group Leads. They capture it when you're clicking the approve button. So as you're going through all the
Mhm.
new applications to join your group, when you click approve, they scrape the email address out of that form field, and then they can put it in a spreadsheet. They can send it to MailChimp or ConvertKit or any of those other softwares.
Mhm.
All that kind of automation happens in the background. It's really cool because it's a browser plugin. It's not, Facebook just disabled all the API access to groups. So it doesn't rely on that. It is a browser plugin. So it just takes the information it sees on the screen and puts it into whatever your system you're using.
Okay. So what about like having polls or like other things like that too, instead of you just
Mhm.
posting content? Like what do you recommend or how often should you do something like that that's maybe a little bit different than just a general question, and people commenting, like, just to keep the content fresh, I guess? What
Yeah.
would you recommend?
Yeah. All the above. And you never know what Facebook's algorithm choice of the day is, right? I mean, I think they change all the
Hmm.
time. So yeah, I encourage people to use all the different types of content that Facebook allows you to post a picture, post a link, post a story, use the poll feature, ask questions. I, I think asking questions is a great way to do it. You don't want to overwhelm the community, but asking really basic questions like, hey, where's everybody from? What state are you from? Or,
Hmm.
if you have something coming up that everybody in the group's kind of looking forward to, have you been? Are you looking to go? What are your questions about it? Those kind of general questions really help drive a lot of traffic. And as far as how often, I think it depends on your group. If you build your group right, you can sit back a little bit more and you don't have to post as often. The group will kind of start interacting on their own. That's the best
Hmm.
way to do it, is once you can kind of build the momentum. But in the beginning, I don't think you should post any more than how much interaction you're getting. So if you post a message and it takes a couple of days before somebody interacts or responds, then posting twice a day probably isn't going to help, right?
Hmm.
You want to make sure that those posts you are doing, when somebody does respond, engage with them, respond to their question or their answer, and build the momentum that way instead of flooding them with all these posts. Just use that one post you did and engage with them, and
Hmm.
try to get more people involved, and then you can go from there. You can grow.
Hmm. Perfect. I know there's just so much that's around even having these online communities when it's something that we're not familiar with. We haven't really done it yet. I'm sure
Right.
there's some baby steps to take, and make sure that we know exactly, what we're doing and all of that as well too. So, I know, is there like a specific industry too that you say like you really should be in, an online community versus some maybe it doesn't make sense?
Uh, that's a good question. I mean, I think everybody can kind of use community, whether you're using it in email or Facebook group. I think
Mhm.
any industry can have community around it. You just have to figure out again what your community is looking for,
Mhm.
and fill those needs first. And then once you start figuring that out and you're able to connect with them, then you can learn the medium, right?
Mhm.
It may not be a Facebook group. It may be a Facebook page. It may be your personal profile. It may be
Mhm.
LinkedIn, right? I mean, there are other places where people feel like they need to interact. So maybe if I have a friend who, came out of the HR world and she does a lot of that kind of consulting. Her community is on LinkedIn. That's where those people
Mhm.
live. So yeah, figure out how you identify and how you meet the needs of your community, and then you'll figure out the medium later.
Right. Well, I was thinking about that too. Definitely there's, LinkedIn groups, there's Facebook groups, there's, different things that you can use. So like you said, identifying maybe where your audience really hangs out
Right.
is going to be important. And sometimes people find that hard to figure out too. It's like, well, I have, a business to business, but yet I'm talking to individuals who own the companies as well. And so maybe I should be here instead of there, and so sometimes it's hard to
Right.
figure out.
It
But I
is.
guess
Yeah.
you could just test it, right? And see,
Right.
give it a certain period of time and see how well it does and kind of go
Yeah.
from
I
there,
think
right?
I totally agree. I think you should test each medium, each platform. You don't, especially in the beginning, you don't have to be present on every single platform every single
Hmm.
day. Test them out and see where your audience is. I mean, like we don't do anything on Threads, but maybe your audience is on Threads, right? So maybe
Hmm.
that is where you need to be, but you won't know that by spending hours posting on every single platform.
Right.
Do one at a time and kind of find out where they are. And go and look at
Hmm.
hashtags and other responses and other questions on other profiles and groups, and you'll figure out where they are, and then you can kind of go from there.
Hmm. Perfect. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the time we have together. So I want to ask, if someone is interested in connecting with you, how can they find you to connect?
I'd love to connect more. If you have questions about building community or growing your email list or any of that, I'd love to help. PaulGowder.com is where I talk about all of that kind of stuff. PaulGowder.com/email tools is that video I just did about, my favorite tools for building email. But yeah, head on over to PaulGowder.com. That's where I'll post all that information.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Paul, for being a guest on my show and sharing your expertise on this topic. I enjoyed our discussion, and I think you shared some fabulous tips for my listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.